a time to get on and get hooked up with us. If y'all have questions, y'all start posting them in the comments, and we'll be answering those questions as well. Just everybody, welcome to the. Well, maybe I won't say. Welcome to the poop show.
Does it show you have anybody on there?
Yeah.
They were waiting on us, I guess.
She hit their live button. I don't know.
How long has it been on?
We don't know.
Jennifer was trying to get the tripod to stand up there straight so we could get on camera, and I guess it just...
If you didn't see our post, we had planned to come over today and bring some horses and do some riding live and answer some questions and just kind of let y'all be a part of the process, because you know, some people learn by reading books, and some people learn by listening to lectures, and some people learn different ways. I learn by doing. I'm a hands-on kind of learner. If I can see it, somebody doing it, it's easier for me to learn that way. I can kind of replicate what I'm seeing. I struggle a little bit being dyslexic with the understanding the written word part of it, so I'm a little more hands-on, visual kind of learner. So we just thought this would be a good way to help. Maybe if people see the process, then it helps you understand it a little more. So the horses that got the most likes on the video was Hope, Bixby, and Bo. So those are the 3 horses that we have with us here today that we'll be riding here in a little bit. But there was a few questions that were just, we felt like that we could just answer kind of standing here and just waiting for everybody to get kind of logged on before we get to the riding part. We'll just kind of go ahead and get into that part. So one of the questions that kind of amused me was Jason asked, well, if I can get to him here. He asked about how important it is for your horse to be soft in the face and broke in the rib cage, and I think he asked that a little bit tongue in cheek, but it actually is a really good question. And if you know me at all, then you know that it's a very important part of having my horses broke and, you know, really feeling like they're ready to do their job. And I felt like Jackie Lightfoot's question right after that, I would like to know how to get a horse to give at the pole and round their back. And Jason's question really kind of led into Jackie's question to me, because that's how you get a horse to break at the pole and round their back. And we can demonstrate later on the horses for a better understanding, but to get your horses soft in the face and supple in the rib cage will help those horses begin to round that back up. And so, you know, a lot of people really focus on shoulder control, and to me, a horse drops their rib cage before they drop their shoulder. So if I can begin to control a horse's rib cage movement with my legs, then I have more control of the shoulder movement in a horse. I try to get my horse's feet connected to my hands. So if I were to throw my hand way out, away from their neck, their front foot is going to follow my hand. And so, if I raise my hands up really high, then that's going to elevate them, and that front foot is going to follow that hand as well. And over time, I think every horse will connect their feet to the rider's hands, because you see that a lot where people are really riding with high hands, and you'll see those horses climbing in their run. And for us, when we think of speed, we don't necessarily think of moving the feet quicker. we think of moving them longer. We want to elongate the movements to lengthen the strides of these horses so that you cover more ground. Because there was a video, I think, of Secretariat and another horse running a race. And they overlapped the video so that the horses were running stride for stride, but Secretariat's time ended up being faster than the other horse because over the course of the race, his strides covered more ground. So he was, every stride takes the same amount of time, whether it's a short stride or a long stride, it takes the same amount of time on the clock. So if you want to get faster, then you've got to think longer, not quicker. Because sometimes what we found is when you start thinking quicker and they're just moving their feet faster, sometimes they're not really going anywhere. When they're just kind of in that, I need to move my feet quicker, they're not really going anywhere when they do that.
Yep, the purpose of the flare in the front of those bars in that saddle is so that shoulder blade can run up under the front of that bar to get that longer extension. And the purpose for my saddle, the way that it's rigged, and we have a video about that on YouTube, it's all geared to the tree itself. So you get a tug from the front, you get a tug from the back, you come down to about a 7/8 position, and it's to get an even tug on that tree that won't just put all the pressure on the shoulders. Because running faster, to go from here to here in that stride on those front legs is running faster. It's like Jennifer was saying, it's not like going to that sewing machine mode, da 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 da. It's that stride moving from here. Oh, look, I can really move that shoulder underneath that saddle to here, and that is running faster. You might not feel it, but the time that you run should reflect it. The freedom that horse has underneath your saddle. Very, very important.
So Linda Fields asked, I would like to know the day of a horse trainer. How does your day start and end? It starts with a pot of coffee and then a leave. Just kidding, but not really. Coffee and get you going. When the weather is good and it's not too hot, I usually start my day. I get to the barn about 8 and get the horses fed and clean stalls. If we've left, if there's been horses in the barn overnight, we always get the horses fed and then we really do a good cleaning on the stalls. And then pretty much we just saddle up and start ride until we're done. And then when we get done, this is the first really season that I've been able to hire barn help, and so I have a young high school kid that comes in the evenings 5 days a week for me and feeds and takes care of the horses, and he's been a real godsend to me to come and do that. And he's just a great addition because it's helpful to just once I'm done at the end of the day to just be able to go home and kind of have the rest of the day off. If we're planning on going to exhibition colts, I like the places that I can go early. Glen Rose and Alvarado, they have their exhibitions that start at like 2 in the middle of the day, and I really like that because typically with horse trainers, you start especially in the summertime, you're starting your day really early to try to beat the heat, and so you're up and at the barn by 6, 5:30 or 6, so that you can try to get all your horses rode and done by noon. And then, when you go like to Alvarado and Glen Rose, those facilities are climate controlled. So it's nice that you can kind of get in out of the heat if you need to. But and then, just being able to come to these covered arenas and ride is helpful at times. But so that's, there's nothing thrilling about it. You just, get up. It's about like going to work. You get up, you go to the barn, take care of horses, ride everybody, come home, eat supper, and go to bed. It's a typical day.
It's a work day.
It's Not as it probably seems more exciting than it is. I don't know. Our horses keeps pawing and scaring herself. Sierra Spears asks, what do you like to have done with a young horse before starting the pattern? Example, do you like them to have experience besides basic training they get in the first 60 to 90 days of riding, such as ranch work, or just to make sure they have the fancy basics? We don't have cows or really access to cows. If you do, that's great. I mean, I think the more that you can do with them before you put them on the pattern, the more it's just going to help you to just in that process of getting them broke. I like to have at least 90 days on mine, before I start them on the barrels. And it just differs from horse to horse. Some horses pick up quicker than others, so you can start them a little sooner. Some horses take a little longer, so you won't start them until later. But when they're staying soft in the face, yielding that rib cage to leg pressure, I can move their hip independently. I can move their front end independently. When they pretty much have all of that, then we'll start with the barrel pattern. Or if some of y'all saw the 6-barrel pattern that we shared, we'll kind of start there as a jumping off point with them, and that it gives them the idea that when they see a barrel, oh, I need to get ready to turn, and they start to associate that barrel with turning it or doing work right there.
Yeah, I know at clinics I've run into sometimes especially children, and their parents have hauled them right there around locally, but they never have been off to a big barrel race or anywhere bigger than just their little local stuff. And so these children want to learn how to barrel race, but they really don't have life experiences. And it gets to be that way with the colts too. You have trying to take horses to the barrel pattern and run them through there when the horse himself has not had any life experiences. We talk about going to the Josie Junior World. That's a big deal around here. But if you've never been away from your house more than 30 minutes or an hour, going to something that big can be a little overwhelming. And so, like we were just talking, our colts have really, the Bixby and Bo, they've never been to this arena. And so this is a life experience for them. So we're coming when it's quiet, we're coming when we can set up the barrels and we can work them. We can just have that experience in this arena so that when we do come and there's all the commotion in the back and horses running in and out, they've had experience with this arena. And that gets to be, especially for the fractious ones, that gets to be really important.
Sierra Spears asks, if a horse farther along in training gets injured or has to take time off for whatever reason, where do you start when bringing them back? Slow work? If so, what drills might you do to reintroduce them or remind them to pick up where they were? Us personally, we've not necessarily had horses that have been injured and had to be off for long periods of time. So to me, it would depend on what the situation was. If you're talking like 6 months of stall rest, you need to really start back slower. I would start with, which I'm sure the vets recommend this, turnout time to begin with. Maybe start off with ponying them around for a little while. Just reintroduce them, slowly up to work. If you have aqua treads or something like that available, we have utilized those at times. Phoebe, one time, she got to traveling a little wonky, and so I took her to the vet, and she was sore in like a hip flexor. And we think that maybe she fell in the trailer and kind of hipped herself and bruised that hip a little bit. And so
Getting up.
The vet injected it, and then he said to give her, I think it was like 3 weeks off. And then he recommended to put her in an aqua tread for like 10 times in an aqua tread before we started back riding her, because what the aqua tread does is it'll kind of force a horse to travel straight, because it would be kind of like you walking on a treadmill. it kind of would force her to walk straight, travel straight, and kind of rehab that little bit of injury where she had been compensating for that, and so we did that. We gave her the 3 weeks off, and then 10 days in the aqua tread, and then started back with just kind of light riding for a week, and then built her back up to some pattern work, and the whole process probably took a month and a half, and then she was ready to go. I think the first place I took her to, she won it like handily, and it was just, she felt really good, and really that's kind of about the most significant injury that we've had. We've not ever, knock on wood, we have not had a horse that we've had to do colic surgery on. I've not had a horse bow a tendon or tear a suspensory or anything like that really required a significant time off for a horse. We try to feed really good feed and hay. We keep our water buckets really clean. We hang salt licks in the stall to keep them drinking. So we just don't, we don't have, other than maybe a little gas colic, we've not ever had a colic that has required surgery. We've used Zestera for a few times when we've had one that was a little more of kind of a gas colic, dosing them with Zesteras, pulled them out of it for us. Getting them hydrated, getting some fluids in them, have seemed to, I don't know if we just catch them early enough or Jesus is our friend, but we just have not had to go the surgery route as far as colics go. So I don't know, I feel really blessed in that.
Yeah. Well, I've worked with riders that have, sustained an injury. And when it comes to riders who have sustained an injury and then getting back on, they're just a little like, whoa, I just take them back to the 6 barrel thing, and we just start, weaving through the 6 barrels as shown in our video that we posted yesterday, and then getting them to lope those really big circles and around the barrels, and just really there's just one word that comes to my mind if a rider or even a horse has sustained injury, and that would be confidence. Not only physical do you want to build everything back up physically, but in that time of building physically, you need to build confidence as well, because to me, that's what you use to compete with. You go to the practice pen, you build confidence, you go to the big barrel races and you compete. You compete out of that confidence that you built in the practice pen. So, that's true of horses too, because sometimes they lose their confidence when they've been injured.
These next 2 questions, I'm going to lump them together a little bit. Chelsea Erskine asked, I'd like to know about the maintenance, preventative care you do for your athletes, supplements, chiro, acupuncture, injections, PEMF, swimming, hydrosize, the frequency you do this stuff like that to help maintain them. And then Beth Peterson asked, what changes do you make from a weekend with several runs, big show in one place, or hitting a few rodeos? Extra maintenance, preventative measures, hauling, and stalling preferences. So with, as far as the maintenance part goes, we start from the feet up. And so the first thing that we do is we make sure that we have a really good farrier. And we have been blessed to have Aaron Loam in our program. He has really helped us to add longevity to all of our maintenance with our horses. We're having to do a lot of that stuff less frequently. He has been a huge blessing to us as far as keeping our horses sound and keeping them going. And so that's place number 1 that we start. We start with a good farrier. The next place that we start is we have a really, really good equine dentist, Cody Hamilton, that comes and that does our teeth and works on our horses. And we've worked with Cody for a while now and developed a history with him, and he has a history with our horses. And so, good teeth care, that's another part of maintenance on a horse. On these, I ride primarily young horses. That's 90% of what I'm going to be riding. And so he's probably at our barn every 3 months But the young ones, we keep them on a 6-month schedule, unless Cody tells us something different, that, well, we could probably stretch this one longer, or this one has some issues and maybe we need to see him a little quicker. That's kind of the rotation that we keep our horses on, and so we like to catch them in the spring when they've started shedding caps, and then early fall, right before, those first futurities with BFA now, it moved up to November. So we try to, about mid-October, touch base with where those teeth are at and what's going on. And then we have found a really great osteopath, Kathy Thomas. She's another great asset to our program. And osteopaths and chiropractors, they're the same but different. We've used both, and for my preference, I really like to work with Kathy because it's not just that she can tell me what's wrong, but usually she can kind of give me the reason behind why it's wrong, and I can address it from that end of things, as well as her address it from the body balancing end of things. So she's been a great asset to us. We've used several different vets. We've gone to Outlaw Equine. Love Josh. He is a mad scientist to watch him work. He's a really great vet. Dr. William Rhodes is the one that diagnosed Phoebe's hip injury. He's in Whitesboro. He's really great. Kind of our go-to guy is Dr. Frank Fluitt out of Weatherford, and he's strictly mobile. And so as far as just kind of maintenance, injections, and that kind of thing, he's been really great to take care of that. We will treat for EPM. There again, kind of on an as-needed basis. We don't necessarily just do it just because. If we really think that that's an issue, then we will. We'll look for changes in behavior that kind of clue us into that that's potentially something that's going on. Sometimes a horse will develop a twitch in their face, or they'll start cross-firing in their leads when maybe they haven't been cross-firing. You'll just feel a little bit of weakness. You'll notice a little bit of lethargy. I can say that right. Maybe they've been feeling good, firing good, running good, and you notice that their times have maybe dropped off just a little bit. Look for any maybe places of muscle atrophy. There again, you're feeding good feed, good hay, but maybe they just kind of start to drop off in their weight. Now, sometimes horses will do that if you get up into the heat of the summer and you're really hauling them hard and competing on them hard. So you might want to consider upping their source of energy. Maybe an extra flake of alfalfa hay, or
add a third feeding.
Add a good healthy fat to your feed if you haven't, like an oil, a DAC oil or something like that to their feed. I know for Hope, I put her on Lexitinic through the summer just to, we were rodeoing and stuff, and kind of really keep her up and feeling good and on her toes. We put her on Lexitinic, and just to give her that extra little bit of kick to get through that long, hot summer.
If they're growing too, you can give them a third feeding. Don't just go adding feed to the morning and evening feed, because you can feed them too much. But if you, like during the middle of the day or something, give them another scoop or a half a scoop or something.
I'm a huge fan of Zestera. I use it a lot. So before I'm going to be gone for a weekend to a big show, about 2 days out, I'll start dosing them with Zestera, and they'll be on it the entire time I'm there. If I know that they're a horse that's a little more prone to stress when hauling, then I'll double the dose. It's 10 cc's daily as maintenance. If they're a little more prone to be stressful, I'll double that to 20 cc's. My bay colt is one of those. I have had to get him the omeprazole ranitidine paste from the vets at the shows, and that's certainly something that's not out of question to do. If you know that you have a horse that's a little bit of a stressor and a little prone to want to be ulcery, I think if you'll stay ahead of the curve as far as like keeping them on Zestera or something like that, you could possibly keep it from going into a full-blown case of ulcers. You know, we try to keep our horses on a regular worming schedule. I'm not a huge supplement person, because we had a really good vet one time tell us that it's almost impossible to make something that goes in your mouth and through your digestive system that's going to be small enough to get into the joint space. So, you know, we do inject our horses when we feel like they need it. As far as supplements goes, the only one that we do use and really like is Animal Element, and it's a little more all natural. You can give it to horses who have PSSM. It does have the hyaluronic acid for the joint. It's a low level detox, so as your horses are exposed to environmental toxins, you know, if you keep them on that low grade detox, then it helps support their body and its ability to kind of fight off those toxins that occur naturally through our water system, or you know, the fly spray, just different things that we expose them to at times. That Animal Element has been really good for us. We don't have a huge issue with our horses getting sick. I mean, they'll, you know, some of them will get the occasional snotty nose, that kind of thing, but no major sicknesses. You know, we haven't really had issues with that too much. We don't vaccinate our horses. We don't. I mean, I don't know. We'll give them a rabies if that's something that they're recommending for our area. We will give them tetanus, but typically we don't do yearly vaccinations. That first, when those colts are in that 3-year-old year, and we're going to be going off to BFAs, you know, sometimes like early enough out that if they were to have any kind of reaction, they could be over it by then. I will give the VEWT vaccination. That one's been around a long time, and I feel pretty safe about giving that. But I don't know. I think horses are kind of like people. Once they build up that immunity to those environmental things, then I don't see a need to just keep doing it over and over.
That strong immune system, working on a strong immune system, and that the thing that mainly attacks the immune system is stress. Okay, so the stress shouldn't be in the barn. The stress might be in the training or in the hauling, but you should be able to control that enough to where it's you know, you can deal with it for them, that stressing. And one thing I was going to say is, you know, we're fixing to come into our summer. Looks like we kind of went from winter, right, going to have that Texas summer. And so horses that are over 10 years old can get dehydrated a lot easier than some of your younger horses. And so mainly for that electrolyte, you can go to Walmart and just get a container, the powder of Gatorade. Ours like Arctic Ice. We want to put it in the water bucket, but sometimes they won't drink the water some of them are funny. So we'll just put it in the feed. And one time I was going to put it in the water bucket, and I put the Gatorade scoop of Arctic Ice in the water bucket, and before I could get the hose and fill it up, the horse had already licked all that scoop up. And so just be mindful that the older horses, the heat really does hurt them. Horses do cold better than they do heat. So, you know, just kind of keep an eye on them during the summer. Be sure they drink plenty and keep their water buckets clean. That really helps them drink.
I love it when we go to the fraternities and Andrea's there. She's probably hands down one of the best people with that MagnaWave or PEMF machine that I've dealt with. So I love it when we go to the fraternities and Andrea's there, and I do let her. I love for her to work on my horses. Once we get there, we try to go through the stalls, make sure the stalls are clean and there's no sharp objects in the stalls that the horses could hurt themselves on. I prefer the pelleted shavings if they're available. But horses rest better if you bed their stalls down really good soft bedding and shavings. They're gonna rest a lot better, and they've actually done studies on this, that horses rest better in kind of bedded stalls. And so if we're going somewhere where there's cement and they have mats available, then we put mats down for them. We clean the stalls several times a day, scoop out the pee, add shavings as needed. A good part of respiratory health in horses is giving them a good breathing environment to live in. So, kind of keeping your stalls wetted down a little bit so they're not too dusty. Getting that pee scooped out of there so they're not standing in there just breathing that ammonia smell from that pee. If you're gonna, like for BFA or now Oklahoma City, when you've been in that barn all week, that ammonia smell gets to be pretty stout. So we'll start trying to get those horses out of the barns as much as we possibly can and get them into some fresh air, because just standing there breathing that smell, that alone can make them sick, not to mention just the kind of the weak stress and weakening of their immune system and being in contact with all kind of different horses. That is not just a risk, but them just kind of standing in those stalls and breathing those fumes, that can be pretty hard on their lungs too. I'm a big turn them out person. I don't like my horses to be standing up in stalls 24/7. I mean, it'd be kind of like if you sat on a couch for 23 hours a day and the only time that you got off of that couch was to go do strenuous exercise for an hour. By the end of a week, you would be so dang sore that you couldn't hardly stand it. And so I don't know. I think maybe some of the reason we don't see the injuries is because we let them be out and be horses. And we let them have community. We turn them out with other horses as long as they're all getting along and not fighting with one another. If we find a little group of horses that gets along, then they're out together. We believe in just letting them be horses, letting them just kind of be out and graze and have their heads down and roll around and just I don't know. I think for their mental health, that's an important thing. I know when we've had several days of rain and our horses have had to be up, sometimes us just getting them from the stall to the pasture, we look like grooms at the racetrack trying to get them suckers across the yard to get them over to the pasture, because they've got that tail curled up and their head is up, and I'm like, do you know how bad this would be if I got this out of the stall and tried to ride this horse right now? Oh man, yeah. I'd be up there for 2 hours trying to get them kind of mentally to a place where they were ready to pay attention. So I'm a big fan of those horses being able to be out and be a little more natural. I do blanket in the winter, but there again, I think them having a little bit of hair on them is not a bad thing, because when we go to barrel races or whatever, we can't always be in controlled climate-controlled environments. And so when you pull them blankets off, they're going to have to stand out there in the cold, and you wouldn't want to be standing out in the cold in a short-sleeve shirt when it's 30 degrees. So it's okay for them to have a little hair. They don't need to look like pleasure horses ready to go to the AQHA world. We're not trying to impress anybody with having these slicked off horses. It's pretty, but sometimes it's not feasible, especially, like if you're rodeoing and you're going up north where it gets really cold up there compared to down here in the south. Yeah. They're going to need to have a little bit of protection from that. So let them get a little winter hair and, be a horse. I think it's good for their well-being. And so I think some of the rest of these questions probably,
I wanted to talk just a minute. I don't know if there's a question on there about warming up. Back in the day, the racetrack vet that I used, he told me, because I was asking him, how long should I warm up? He said, Missile had a really big hip, a lot of really deep muscle. And he said, you know, for Missile, you need 45 minutes of walking, trotting, loping, because that deep muscle down next to the bone, you know, when the heart pumps, it can't pump blood all over the body, so the body tells the heart where it needs to go as far as the oxygen goes. He said it might take most all of that to get those deep muscles really oxygenated. Today, you know, people aren't into that so much anymore. But when you go to compete, or you're going to work your horse at home in a practice pen, I want to encourage you to really warm him up. Make a big effort to really do enough walking, trotting, loping both ways to oxygenate those muscles and give them a big dose of oxygen before we're actually going to run. So that warm up is important. You know, usually if we ran about 9:30. I would feed probably about 4:30. Sometimes we'd be 30 minutes, get almost there. At 4:30, I'd make Murray stop because Missile had to eat his supper. and you know, the heck with getting there with just 30 more minutes. We'll be there. Then you can feed him at 5. No, we got to feed him at 4:30. It was just, to me, that important to kind of keep that scheduling. I know for some people that's not a big thing, but horses, they love it to be the same all the time, you know. They love that consistency in how you do things. They can depend on it. And so you don't want to be more than 30 minutes late feeding or 30 minutes early feeding, morning or evening. So things like that consistency in the barn. I mean, again, you know, I tell people we're going to learn about skill in the saddle, which is important, but we've had some horses that won. And so then the next thing is you have to take care of those horses. They're not machines. They're flesh and blood. So having that good team that Jennifer was talking about around you to give you the help that you need. You know, you need the eye of the shoer to look at those feet. You need the osteopath. You need the veterinarian. You need the equine dentist. You need those people who can feed into your program and help you when you really need to have that major, I'm fixing to go, I'm going to spend a lot of money in entry fees. It's going to cost me some money to get there because I'm going to have to travel for a while. I'm going to have to stay there for a week. We already know with the fraternities, it's like, oh my goodness. If the entry fee is $800, you know, then you got stalls on top of that. And then it might take another $800 to be there all week. If you enter the jackpots, or the side pots, you've got to eat, you've got to pay the RV for the horse trailer, or you've got to go rent a motel room. You're going to have quite a bit of money into that week. And so, you know, skill in the saddle. I've seen so many people arrive at the barrel race. They ride up right here behind the arena. They're ready to go. And then something happens between the alleyway and the first barrel and it looks like they're about to fall off. What is that? It's like they do everything right until they're right here behind this alley. And so Jennifer's, she's kind of warming Bixby up a little bit. She's going to have a little teaching on Bixby. And this is the Austin Arena in, I think, Myrtle Springs, Texas. Isn't this considered Myrtle Springs?
I think so.
It's a big arena.
So there was two questions that I thought, two more questions that I thought kind of tied in together and could be answered. There were two questions that were asked that I thought I could kind of tie together and answer on horseback. And one of them was about kind of teaching a horse to stay balanced, and one of them was about using a tie down. And so for me personally, I like tie downs. I don't think that they're a gimmick or a shortcut. I think they're a tool. And so every horse that comes in my barn at some point will have a tie down on. And we got to get our social media microphones here so y'all can hear me. I'll put a tie down on everything and then kind of decide as they progress whether they still need it or not. Hope was started in a tie down. She probably ran the first 3 or 4 futurities that she went to with the tie down on, and then I took it off of her. She wasn't seeming like she was really wanting to run with the tie down on. She's very light in her face, and so I took it off of her, and she was able to still hold her collection, but she ran a little bit freer without the tie down, so I've left it off of her. Sometimes at home in the slow working stuff, I'll still put one on her. And then the other question was about keeping a horse balanced, and I think a tie down can help with that. I don't know about y'all, but my hands are not always perfect. And sometimes in a run, you get a little quicker with your hands than you do at home when everything is slow and controlled. And so if I'm running in there to that first barrel and maybe my horse doesn't see it and I have to take them a little bit, sometimes that taking them will surprise them and they'll lift their head. Well, if I have a tie down on them and they kind of bump that tie down, then it'll bring them right back into that collection and into my hand. Whereas if I didn't have a tie down on, then they could stay lifted a little longer and it'd be a little more effort to get them to kind of drop down into that collection. And so I'm going to kind of show you about the staying balanced part. And part of that comes from riding one-handed. I work on... when I run in a pattern, I'm gonna go to one hand in the turn. And so in my dry work, I need to ride my horses with one hand so that when I go to one hand when I'm competing, it's not gonna be a surprise to them and they're gonna know what to do. And part of that is teaching your horses to have integrity so that, if I have my hand right here, then they'll kind of hold that position around my hand right there. And so when I'm teaching this, I'll use kind of my outside leg, kind of push that hip into that circle, and I'll keep bumping that rein on the inside right here. And that gets them to know that I want that hip in and the rib cage tucked. And I want to just be able to see the corner of her eye right here and hold this shape. And so, like a lot of times at home, I'll ride with split reins. And when you ride with split reins, a lot of times you'll stay two-handed with split reins. And so there's times that you need to come to your practice pen and ride with a round rein so that you ride these horses one-handed, and they begin to learn how to have integrity on that inside rein right there. And so on these young horses, I'm not going to continue to use my outside rein to hold her up. If I'm coming in this circle and she wants to drop into it, then I'm going to bump on my bridle to make her pick back up and squeeze with my outside foot to push that hip in. Because if I've got my horse's hip pushed in, then physically they can't drop their inside shoulder. Now, they could push out with this outside shoulder, but they can't drop an inside shoulder if you've got that hip pushed in and that hip is up under them. It's not physically possible because horses work off of diagonals. I've taught my horses to follow that inside pull. So as long as I have pressure on that inside rein, then Bixby's going to keep coming to that inside right there. So the microphone's not on?
What she's saying while you're out there.
Oh. So I want to demonstrate to you about when I talked about my hand being connected to her front feet, and I want you to watch. I'm going to keep my hand up and kind of pushing against Bixby's neck, and you're going to notice that she's going to maintain a big circle, and then I'm going to drop my hand into this circle, and I want you to watch what happens to my circle. So if I've got her up and my hand is up and I'm asking her into this circle, she's being a little bit distracted here. Got her into this circle, and now I've dropped my hand. You see what just happened to my forward motion? Well, if there was a barrel there, it'd be out of the pen. I can pick my hand back up and push her back out into this circle. Drop my hand. She tightens down. Pick my hand back up and I can push her out of this circle. So her feet are connected to my hand. So with this inside rein, I can make this circle as big as I want, or I can make it as small as I want. I think we pretty much have answered all the questions that were on the post prior. Have they posted any additional questions or something they want to see? I think, well, I guess maybe to kind of demonstrate Jackie's question about keeping a horse so they're not elevating. If you've done all your dry work and they're doing it in dry work, then it may be, I would probably go to a tie down to just kind of reinforce that. I know with Phoebe, she had to always have a loose tie down because sometimes when I touch her face, she would kind of lift her nose, and that loose tie down was just a little bit of a reminder to her to keep her head down and keep that forward motion.
Yep. Lisa Busby asked, can you tell me what bit is good to start my young horse in after an O-ring snaffle?
I mean, probably my go-to would be a reverse gag. It would depend on if the horse was. Well, this Bixby is pretty bendy, and so this is that Jordan Briggs no-hit bit with a Mullen mouth, because she's pretty bendy, and she'll also kind of want to get a little bit over tucked. So I put something on her that's going to kind of keep her up and a little more elevated. But probably from a ring bit, my next go-to would either be like a little short shank Ed Wright or a reverse gag bit. And the mouthpiece would depend on whether the horse was bendy or stiff If they wanted to be a little more naturally stiff, I'd go with the chain. If they were a little more bendy, then I'd probably go with just a regular twisted wire.
Okay, I'm looking through here for questions. Y'all better want to trot through a little bit.
Yeah.
Repeat the questions that she asked you.
Huh?
Repeat those questions that she
She was talking into the microphone.
I know, but not yours.
Oh, Lisa O'Keefe had asked.
No, Lisa Busby.
Lisa Busby had asked what bit you would transition a colt to from an O-ring.
And she said a reverse gag, maybe with any particular mouthpiece. You like the twisted wire better?
It depends on the horse. She's asking what mouthpiece. It depends on the horse. If they need more bend, then a chain. If they need less bend, then a snaffle, a twisted wire, just the regular twisted wire. If the more breaks a mouthpiece has, the more bend you're going to get. If they're a little bit sensitive at the corners, then I have one that's twisted on the sides and a chain in the middle, or you can get it with a smooth that's a chain in the middle.
Okay, we're going to get Jennifer maybe to trot Bigsby a little bit through the pattern. She's never been to this arena before, and so just to kind of get her, on the pattern, looking for the barrels instead of all the other distractions that could happen here.
This is I'm a little slow when it comes to training, so I probably will have my horses from broke to barrels 6 months into them before I start asking for any kind of speed on the pattern. We're just now kind of starting to think about hauling these 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds that are going to be next year futurity prospects. And so sometimes even before we go and do the exhibitions, we'll try to bring them to some indoor arenas like this when there's nothing going on, just to kind of get them exposed to the different sights and sounds and stuff that are here. And sometimes just being undercover is a little bit intimidating for horses when they've only ever been ridden like outside or out in the pasture. Sometimes just coming under a cover and being ridden is a totally different feeling. And so we'll try to come and to arenas like this when there's nothing going on and do a little work with them so that they don't get too stressed about the process of just going to, where showing up and your name being called. And even if it's an exhibition, you just have a little bit of an expectation of what's going to happen. And so just to have kind of that exposure of them coming to an indoor arena and having that experience before you have to go, you want to go do
We usually come here, there's
exhibition.
horses standing over there behind that second barrel. So if that second barrel is really close to that fence, these young ones, they're going to look at those other horses. They know. Leave that microphone with me. I'm going to take the microphone because Murray's filming this to put this on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. And then that way we can get it.
So I'm just going to go through and show y'all what a typical work session for me would look like with my horses.
Yep, if we could just come here and work, Jennifer this is how she would just go about kind of getting her horses. There's no zoom. You can't zoom when you're live, so we have to kind of see it from a distance. But it will be taped and it'll be on YouTube, and Murray can zoom. So she'll warm up for a minute, and then I don't know if you can see this. This is the gate to this arena while she warms up. And so this is how you come in and out. And so there's not a really alleyway. And this arena is so big. That gate is so wide. You can come in this arena any way, pointed any direction that you want to because of that gate. And so really pay attention to her line to the first barrel, because even when you're practicing, you know, if today 5 times 5 is 25, but tomorrow you're going to have to ask me because 5 times 5 might be 24. It just kind of depends on my mood. So today I might come in this gate one way. Tomorrow, some friends done give me some big advice and I'm going to just come in another way. I'm just going to do something different. And so then the 5 times 5, the consistency of you knowing that is just not there, because you're different every day. You're asking different, you're talking to your horse different, the language is different, the positioning is different. And so what is this all about? What am I really training? I'm training him to put his feet in the most proper place for the movement that I want around that barrel. Those feet are contacted to the earth. And so that ability to have confidence, how are those feet hitting? Are they hitting the same each and every time? That just gets to be so important that yeah, I've got to go down the steps here and go in the gate. Here's the little concession stand, entry thing. There's a little gate here. Murray's got a zoom, but we don't have a zoom on this, so getting out here, I'll get situated here. And when you have this much room, it's so easy to get lost. Horses and inexperienced riders can get lost in all of this. You see what a glare? So running out for some of these young ones, running back into that glare, that could possibly be a problem. See, big and round, just like the 6-barrel thing was big and round and fluid. You know, I'd like to see go all the way to that hip is beside the barrel, and maybe even a little past it, because the turn is behind the barrel. You go past the barrel, the rider does, and then you turn the barrel. You go past it, and then you turn it. Bixby didn't get a big warm-up time, so she's a little fresh till she gets some loping down. She's not ever bad, but you can always tell when she feels good. She's had kind of a long, nice vacation. Jennifer got her to the point last fall where we were either going to have to just quit and let her rest or bring her on, and then we would have been too early for these futurities. She would have peaked at the wrong time. And so now we let her rest because she just got all this talent and just so willing to give it to you. And we didn't really need her to be making her best runs, you know, as a young 3-year-old. We need her making her best runs. Really, it might be next year, on up into those futurities before we can really say we want her to make her best runs. Let's find out when the most money can be won, and that's when we want our best runs out of Bixby and Bo, because they're both going to go this fall and next year. Bo will be 5 next year, and Bixby will be 4. So really, we hadn't worked Bixby too much since her layoff. So really, what you're seeing is kind of how she was finishing up last year, you know, as a really young 2-year-old. Now she's a really young 3-year-old. But I'll just walk over to the second barrel and let you see how far the tracks are, because this was fresh dirt. So you can see what big round turns that she's making on Bixby, because Bixby's doing everything right, but she's got to keep pushing on those feet. And so there's her line. Going to that first barrel, her tracks, if you look at those tracks, and so the shape of that turn is a definite teardrop. You have tracks coming in. This is tracks coming in. These are tracks coming out. So there's a point. There's a point right here. Now, if we look at this, and I'm kind of pointed right. So the bottom of this teardrop, where you're really trying to get your horse, is way around. My line's not very straight. But from the point of that teardrop, it gives you an idea of where you are. And so when she's finishing her turn, she's looking at the right-hand edge of that second barrel. And she's riding to that barrel where that barrel stays right out in front of that horse's eyes. Because if I get over here and I start moving out, kind of keep an eye on the tracks, but I'm kind of moving away from that. Now, how do you see, if you were the horse, how would you move to that barrel? You can see how the tracks are, so you know what's correct. But if I were out here too wide, too soon, that horse is going to cut across that turn, go right across this turn, right behind the barrel. Okay, there's the tracks leaving. Now I'm kicked out. You can tell the track going to the third barrel, but now I'm running out to the middle. So while I'm out here in the middle, what is the timer doing? Oh, the timer is ticking. So now the timer has to time not only the speed of the race, it has to time the distance of the race. So I'm out here too wide. So how do you see this closing up right here? Oh, once again, that horse is going to have to cut across these tracks, cut across the back of this turn. See, I'm in here really close to that barrel. And instead of leaving, going out that gate and going straight, now I'm going to be running the big bow, my finger out there, the big bow out to that gate. So what's the timer doing? It's ticking. It is ticking. And so just getting good approaches, good exits. See, I'm on Jennifer's track, and I'm still looking at the right-hand edge of that barrel. But once you get up here, see, you can let them push that rein up against that neck, let them move over, and make that turn. And you want to come beside this third barrel running straight out of the pen. And so that's how, you know, if this is what I want on a finished horse, this is what I want on a young one. Because we can't get time to really rear back and run them, and now everything's different. Everything's changed. That's a, oh my goodness. I learned all of this when there was no pressure, no bright lights, no loud music. But then when there gets to be bright lights and music, everything changes. Well, how much confidence does that build? Oh my goodness. Now this is, you saw him also on the 6-barrel exercise. This is Bo, he's 4. Extremely talented little guy, real talented. So he and Bixby will be in the trailer next year. See, pretty much on those same tracks. And you know why? Because the basics ought to always be the basics. No matter how big they are, no matter how little they are, no matter how powerful they are, if they're not quite so powerful, the basics ought to always be the basics. And you know why? Because let's say at some point he needs a tune-up. Usually they need a tune-up when they've been sore, and you get past that soreness issue, and then you have to kind of tune them back up because they have to realize, oh, I'm not sore anymore. So this is like barrel racing 101 right here. This is so basic. Now, Bo might want to change a few things when he starts going through here really fast. But we're not changing the basics because we're going to have to always come back to the basics. Always. Never be a time in your life where you won't have to go back to the basics and you remember your mama or your grandma said, now don't say nothing bad about somebody. Don't say nothing bad. Only talk about them if you can say something good. You remember them telling you that as a kid? And at some point in your adult life, you're going to remember that. Somebody's going to remind you. Well, there's going to be a time in Bo's life. He's just 4. He's got a whole career. Somebody might have to bring him back to the basics. Renew those values of the basics once again. But if he never got them, what are we going to go back to? If he just started with his rider, pull harder, kick harder. You know what? He's not going to make anybody a very nice horse because he's too powerful. Now, what is the confidence builder of that? That you can just ride him right out of that gate and turn around. Not time to run him yet. We got time to go there, and you'll be seeing it. I wish I could zoom in. This is what builds confidence. If we don't have confidence, we don't have anything. I don't care how talented they are. Oh, look at there. Woo! So once again, we're still back. His tracks, 5 times 5 is 25. Now and forever. So his tracks are just laid right there on top of Bixby's. Coming right from beside the first barrel. These tracks. Here's what the second one looks like. You see that little teardrop in there? Woohoo! Why a teardrop? Because a teardrop has straight sides to it. And the straight lines are always faster than the bent ones. So if we had a big bowed one out here, getting into that, if we had tracks way out here, guess what that timer would be doing? Woo! Ticking. Tick, 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 tick. Not in your favor either. So here we are at the point of that teardrop. Here's the tracks. Can you see them? Coming in that big old wide alleyway. She's going to get on Hope right quick, and I'm going to go to this gate, turn around, and let you see how this gate just lets you come in any old way. It's like pick a straw. Oh, look at there. Back up some so you can get a handle on this. So you see that doorway at the end? What if I came down the alley running into that doorway? And then there's just a little bit of light right there, okay? And I don't know that that's my line, but you can see a difference between running at that doorway and shifting over and running. It's a doorway, but it's a smaller doorway. Taking that angle, see how much different my approach is going to be if I take that angle. See if I can find her tracks. Here's her tracks right here. See them little hoof marks? That'd be her. Okay. Still kind of running right at that little doorway right there. Okay, if I were running at the big doorway, look how far off I would be. This is where I don't care how good the rest of the run is. Once you break that timer, there's no way to make this up. You can't run fast enough. Nothing you can do to make this kind of time up. You have just officially changed divisions or moved yourself out of the money. And so these turns are big, but what they do is they encourage your horse to push on his feet. When you get him in here really tight, hug the barrel, hug the barrel. There's so many different things they holler. Turn it like you stole it. Let's see, what's another one? Y'all help me. Y'all come on here and help me. Knock the top off. I don't know what all they holler, but but they won't. I don't know if you can see. I'm going to try to take my foot and make. They want you to be this tight. Well, you think a 1,000-pound animal moving even 20 miles an hour, some of them can go faster than that, can turn that tight? You get out in your big old dually and you see if you can make your dually turn that tight, what happens?
My goal here today for Hope is not to make practice runs. If I'm going to make a run on Hope, it's going to be for money. So I'm not going to waste runs making practice runs on her. The only way that I would do that is if I have a horse that I'm having trouble with and I need to make tuning runs. But Hope is a unicorn and she doesn't really need that. She doesn't really need those tuning runs.
She thinks she is too.
But she does need a little practice and a little slow work, and it's just mostly because Hope is aggressive. She's very aggressive and she really wants to work and wants to do her job. And so just to keep her relaxed and kind of enjoying what she's doing, we'll go through a little bit of what I do with her. And it's different. Like I said, I'm not going to make a practice run on her today. She doesn't need it. But I will show you, like, even at home, if I was going to work Hope on barrels, this is how I would work her at home, unless, like I said, I have an issue that I'm working on specifically. But for just general principle, I'll show you kind of what I do. I'm just going to lope a few circles and kind of get her a little bit loosened up right quick.
One of the things we're going to kind of run an experiment on to see is if Jennifer could work Hope on the 6-barrel exercise, maybe a couple of times a week, and then just ride her the rest of the time, to see if that would be sufficient to where we didn't have to work her on the barrels at home. We need something there at home. We can't just trail ride or ride around the pasture or lope circles like this and her stay sharp on the barrel pattern. We're going to have to find something to engage her on that pattern. See, truly, and I mean, I could be wrong, but to me, there's no way we can lope circles and get a horse fit enough to run barrels, because the muscle groups that they use are really not exercised fully by loping circles. They're not exercised to the point of building strength. So how do you build strength? A muscle has to get tired, and it pulls apart a little bit, and it heals, it redoes itself. And then in that rebuilding, you get more muscle fibers and you get strength. So it absolutely has to be sometimes the actual activity of, can get their air this way. We can build up some amount of strength. We've even tried the aqua tread to build up strength. And if they get those water levels up there and you can get a little incline to your thing, you could build a little more strength, but nothing is going to build the strength like running barrels. But we don't, just what Jennifer said, we don't want to run barrels all the time. We would like to tell them about the 6-barrel exercise and seeing if we couldn't utilize that to keep her in shape and keep her barrel racing muscles in shape, so that you didn't have to run her on the barrel pattern all the time.
One of the things that you might notice about me that's different from maybe some of the other trainers that you've watched is I don't hold my horses into a particular headset. I tend to let them lope a little more natural where they're comfortable with their head, so long as it's not, I don't feel like that they're pushing on the bit or getting out of my hands, then I tend to kind of let that headset be where they're comfortable. I think if you force a horse into a position for a long period of time, you can make them sore. And so long as, I mean, if you noticed when I was hoping that circle, every now and then I'd just kind of bump my rein and she would drop her head to the bit, or I'd put my leg in her and she would move. As long as she's doing those things when I ask her, I'm not going to pick on her about it. There's nothing that can come good of picking on a horse until it turns into a fight with them. And so if she's more comfortable loping with her head a little bit higher in the air, so long as when I touch that bridle, she comes down and into my hand and collects, I'm not going to pick on her about that. Y'all have all seen her run enough that you know that she goes in there and she about makes the same pattern every stinking time. And I have been this way with her from the get-go of her training. As long as she'll stay soft when I ask her to, I'm not going to force her head into an unnatural position and cause other issues in her body other places. I'm going to let her relax and be natural and be comfortable where she's at. And like I said, so long as when I ask, she does, the rest of it, I just ignore, because it's not worth the fight. It's not worth picking on her and making her hate me, hate her job, hate being ridden. I want this to be fun for her too. And you know, she's gotten to a point that she's paid her dues. She's shown me what she's capable of. If I keep her healthy, happy, and comfortable, she's going to do her job, and that's the part that matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
Not that her ride around is some perfect, fancy something. That's not what's important to me. It's that when I ask, they do, and they have accountability, and they are respectful, and as long as they're doing those things, then I'm not going to pick on them.
All righty, we'll see Miss Hope show her pretty little Palomino self off then. She gets a lot of attention because of her pretty, but
Hope is ready, so I keep it big and loose.
yep, Hope is ready, so she keeps it big and loose. Nothing real tight. See, that reins right up on that neck, kind of pushing that neck through that turn, pushing that rein on that neck through that turn. That's such a great way to handle your reins, though. With that rein up on that neck, pushing on it. I've kind of taught this at clinics. Kind of respect that rein, pushing that rein up on that neck. Letting that rudder work. Letting the rudder work. Watch those back feet are both got white socks on them so you can see them. Even Irina might be a little dark. You can see that inside back foot. See how that reaches under and across? She got a big reach up underneath her. That's what makes her rady, because that's real easy for her to do. She's real willing, so willing. She would just turn inside out for Jennifer. And when they give you that gift, you need to be very careful with it. That's a treasure. You might not think that you have a treasure, but when you have those horses that are so willing, they want to please, they want to do, that is just a treasure. You need to hold it in your hand and be mindful of it. Don't abuse it. Y'all are watching her back feet. Hope's going to tell you a lot about herself if you'll watch those back feet. We win barrel races turning. And that's how Hope has won her money. She can run, but man, can that girl turn a barrel. Hoo! That's why it's no point to just get out here and grind on her. We have a treasure. Jennifer has a treasure. Needs to cherish her treasure. As long as you do that, they'll always give it to you. It's when you take it for granted. Never take it for granted. You can be a barrel racer, you can be a roper, you can be a cutter. If you have that horse that gives you that, you know what I'm saying. Sometimes you have very few of them that you can have that relationship with. And what this kind of work does is it keeps Hope honest. See, they're in her turns. She's going to win barrel races turning, and so this kind of work keeps Hope honest.
You know, there again, I'm not going to pick on her. She was respectful. She was doing everything that I asked her to do. Trotting, the reason that I was circling the barrels a couple of times on her is there was a couple of places she was kind of wanting to get in a little bit of a hurry. I wanted her to wait on me just a little bit, and so it didn't take much on her. It never does. So there again, I'm not going to pick on her. She did everything I asked. She stayed respectful. She was relaxed. I mean, on a finished horse, really, that's the kind of work that you want. You want it to just, that they're paying attention to you, that they're listening to your cues. You just reinforce those things that you put in them when you were training them. You know, I just reminded her, you know, when I step out to shift her weight and hold that rib cage in, she did all of that for me. And so, you know, there's nothing more that I can really ask of her. I thought that was a really good practice session for her. I could take that and know that she's ready to go to the rodeo.
Yep, she's really been a blessing to Jennifer and myself too, because I just love seeing her run. So we've just loved Hope from the beginning, and she came being kind of a little scrawny little filly to just being this full-blown beautiful animal, and being willing to give so much of herself, you know, to Jennifer and to the cause of barrel racing. You want to just close us out?
Have they asked any more questions? Do they have any
I don't know if you have any more questions. We have so many that signed on here. We sure hope you've enjoyed it. Kind of scrolling through these, telling me who's watching, seeing if we have a question. I can't believe y'all don't have no questions. She's going to bring the bridles over, and we'll finish up talking about these bits that she used today.
This was what I had on Bixby.
I don't know, come this way and he can...
This is the bit that I had on Bixby. Like I said, Bixby's really light, and she'll kind of want to overtuck a little bit. And so I really like this Jordan Briggs from No Hit Bits on her.
That's a square too, isn't it?
Yeah, but don't let that scare you. I mean, if it didn't have that little bit of square to me, it would be way too dull. So that the Bixby is really light, and she tolerates it. So even though it is a square, it's not too much, because
it doesn't gag that far.
It doesn't gag, and there's not much shank to deal with. So, and then I just had if y'all watch my bit videos, and y'all know that this is my tie down of preference.
It's really a piggin string tie down.
Yeah,
it's made out of piggin
it's a real
string.
thin little rope.
Yep.
And then for Bo, he wants to be stiffer in his turns, and then he's a little bit funny in his face, and so
he's a streak of fling. So hello.
This is the reverse gag that I used on him. It's got the cricket roller in there, so he can kind of play with that with his tongue. And then because he's just a tick stronger, I have this on him for now.
Yeah.
We may or may not stay in this. It just kind of depends. It's working right now. So if it ain't broke, stick with it. So it's just a thin little wire tie down. L&W makes this. This is a JD Morrow. He makes all of my, almost all of my stuff that I use. And I really like him.
It's a reverse gag.
He makes all my reverse gags. His reverse gags don't have as much gag to them. And I'm not a huge gag person, so if the less that I can get away with, the better it fits me. So I like his reverse gags for that aspect of him. And then, like I said, this is the no-hit bit people, and they make really good quality bits as well. So, well, I hope we kept y'all entertained for a little while on this boring quarantine day. So we will turn it around.
Where do you punch? There we go.
We'll be signing off, and we'll see y'all. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, be sure you subscribe to our channel. Like this video and ding that notification bell so that you get updates of when we post new videos. And we will see y'all next week. Y'all have a good weekend.
Happy Easter, everybody.